Okay, we're on. Ahmed?
Yes, we are live now. You
Okay.
can start. Thank you.
Masa al Khair. My name is Sharif Al Khamis, a representative and a board member of the Women's Cultural and Social Society. Today, we would like to host the Gender Equality Forum. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on this special occasion, I would like to congratulate all women all over the world and acknowledge their accomplishments. Today, we have three distinguished guests. First, we start with Her Excellency Anne-Claire Legendre, Ambassador of France in Kuwait, His Excellency Miguel Isidro, Ambassador of Mexico in Kuwait, and His Excellency Dr. Tariq al-Sheikh as the representative of the United Nations Secretary General and Coordinator in the state of Kuwait. First of all, we will begin with the questions as follows. So, Your Excellency, we're glad to have you on board. The first question is, could you please tell us more about the Gender Equality Forum? What is it? What are the goals and the purposes? And what is the UN Women and why is the UN Women supporting it?
Thank you so much, Sharifan. I'm really, really happy and honored to be invited tonight by the Women's Cultural and Social Society on the occasion of the celebration of the International Day for Women's Rights. So congratulations to you and to all the women that are listening to us tonight. It's a great occasion to move forward on women's rights.
Mhm.
So equality and women's rights are really a French priority. And Emmanuel Macron actually made it one priority of his political mandate for the 5 years of his political mandate. And that's why we were honored and very happy to candidate to the presidency of the Generation Equality Forum. So what is the Generation Equality Forum? The Generation Equality Forum marks the 25th anniversary of the Beijing conference. And this conference was very, very important 25 years ago, because for the very first time, this conference recognized that women's rights are also human rights. And, you know, it was a big sea change for women's rights issue. At the time, all activists and governments gathered to, work on all the women's rights on all aspects. And they actually issued the Beijing Declaration, which to that day remained the framework, the legal international framework for women's rights issues. So 25 years later, which is now, I mean, it was last year, but unfortunately because of COVID, we had to postpone the forum. But it's now, you know, we decided to schedule it in 2021. And we are very happy to co-chair this forum with Mexico. And that's why I'm very happy that my dear friend Miguel Isidro is with us tonight to discuss this issue. We are co-chairing this event, but this event is, under the umbrella and convened by the UN and the UN Women. And actually, today, the President Macron, back in France, and the Executive Director for UN Women announced the dates of the forum that will take place in Paris in June, exactly from the 30th of June to the 2nd of July this year, and will be the biggest gathering of feminist activists, governments, civil society, but also business leaders and all the other actors of the society, which are actually stakeholders and willing to participate and contribute to women's rights issues. Our aim is not really to get to another declaration. We have the Beijing Declaration, and that's really the legal framework we want to keep and we want to uphold all over the world. But now, sometimes you have the law and you have the culture, and having the law, it's not sufficient to move forward on women issue. So we need to build these concrete coalitions, and that's why we decided to focus on 6 action coalition for the forum. So the whole discussion will be about 6 issues, which we think with the UN and with Mexico, and we discussed this for quite a long time with also social civil actors, to define 6 priorities which we think are really key to move forward on advancing women's rights. So let me tell you what are these 6 coalitions. The first one is obvious. This is gender-based violence. And we've seen, you know, with the Me Too movement, when Lan Asket in Kuwait, that this issue is a global issue. We see violence against women all over the world, you know, even at their home, at the hands of their husband, partners. So this needs absolutely to be tackled. And we have all been working on the issue, including here in Kuwait. And so we will exchange the best practices, the best laws, and the best instruments to move forward. That's the first question. The second one is economic justice and rights. And we know that, you know, this is a critical issue for the women's right, because when women, you know, get an economic autonomy, of course, you know, it protects them from any kind of you know, domination. They can express themselves, they can accomplish themselves. And those economic rights are also absolutely critical to uphold. This is a long road, and we know that in all our society, we have efforts to make, so we will share as well good practices. The third one, which is where France is actually chairing this priority, is bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health and rights. Because when we look at the violence, when we look at all the other aspects of male domination, it actually starts with the body and the fact that women can decide for their own body and for themselves. So this is also a very sensitive issue. And, you know, across culture, it's not dealt in the same fashion. But this is something we want to raise and we want to have a global discussion about. The fourth is feminist action. And we've been plenty of feminist movements actually emerging around the world. And this is very inspiring. So we want to take this opportunity to actually mobilize and gather all of them in order to, you know, create a dynamic and a movement that would not be just at national or at local level, but at
an international level. Yes.
Absolutely. And the last two ones is technology and innovation for gender equality. This might sound far-fetched, but this is actually critical, because if you look at, you know, technology innovation, sometimes it's focused only on men and not on women's needs. But more importantly, sometimes it includes women at the very beginning of its conception. And actually, we were discussing economical rights, but if you look at the tech world, this world that is supposed to create the future and you know, shape the future, there are very few women entrepreneurs, women tech specialists. And for instance, artificial intelligence is also a tool which is a little bit biased because it can recreate discrimination. So we absolutely need women also to be involved in this type of issues. And the last one is leadership. So how can we help women, you know, getting empowered? And we added this climate question, because we think that if you look at climate transition, you'll see that, you know, female and women are actually the first victim of climate transition. They are also the main actors of climate action. And so we want to both highlight their action, but showcase that, you know, we need to move forward on climate transition because otherwise women will be even more impacted. So that's in short the framework for our discussion to be held both in Mexico and in Paris next June.
Thank you very much. So the same question goes to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Mexico. Could you please tell us more about it? Tell us more about why is the Gender Equality Forum and what is the goal and purposes from...
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
First of all, I would like to express our gratitude to the Women's Cultural and Social Society for organizing this important webinar. It's a really, really important issue to speak about women's rights. Especially, we'd like to thank Chairwoman of the Society, Mrs. Lulwa Al-Mula. Also, I would like to express you, Sharifa, our recognition for moderating today's session. And lastly, I would like to say that it's a great honor for me to share this forum with Her Excellency Anne-Claire Lejeune, Ambassador of France, as well as my very good friend, Dr. Tarek El Sheikh, representative of the United Nations here in Kuwait. Well, I think Anne-Claire has been very, very clear about the main purposes of the Gender Equality Forum. In the case of Mexico, I would like to remark about these action coalitions that Anne-Claire explained very briefly: gender-based violence, economic justice and rights, bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health and rights, feminist action for climate justice, feminist movements and leadership technology. These actions are global and innovative, multitask stakeholder partnerships that will mobilize governments, civil society, international organizations, and the private sector about specific actions that will be implemented in the 5 years term to address some of the challenges for achieving gender equality. A complete on women, peace and security and humanitarian action that counts on the leadership of member states and civil society organizations will be a very valuable instrument to support international efforts for the implementation of this very important agenda and the commitments of the resolution 1325 of the United Nations Security Council. The Generation Equality Forum is a key moment for global mobilization. The event is primarily based on the same logic that made possible the adoption of the Beijing Platform for Action 25 years ago, as the power of activism, feminist solidarity, and young leadership to achieve transformative change. In this context, other important results of the forum will be these conversations about the feminist strategies that will push this agenda to the center of national, regional, and global efforts. As you know, due to the pandemic of COVID-19, the Forum Mexico was postponed. It was supposed to take place in last October, but in this case, it will take place in just a couple of weeks, from March 29 to 31st. It will be held in a virtual format, since there is still no chance to have a presential forum. And as Anne-Claire mentioned, the forum in France will take place in the month of June. Overall, the Gender Equality Forum will try to ensure a multi-stakeholder and human rights approach, promote intergenerational and intersectional balanced representation, ensure that the impact of COVID-19 is transversal to all parts of the agenda, strengthen the women's movement and civil society activism, and especially promote high-level political commitment and action.
Okay, so the third question is to Dr. Tariq Sheikh. Dr. Tariq, could you please tell us more about what is the Gender Equality Forum from a UN perspective?
Thank you, Sharifa, for the question. And I wish also to thank Mrs. Lulwa Al-Mulla for organizing this event. And also I thank for Her Excellency Ambassador Anne-Claire, Ambassador of France, and my dear colleague and friend Ambassador Miguel, Ambassador of Mexico, first for taking the lead on organizing as two member states leading the Generation Equality Forum together with the UN Women. And also actually also leading on this campaign during this period and this important day of the International Women's Day today in Kuwait with the Women Society. The generation equality actually come these days at a very important time during COVID, where the woman has been seriously affected during this COVID in many forms and ways, economically, politically, and even physically. The Generation Equality Forum is actually focusing from the UN perspective to shed light on the priorities of the Beijing conference and renewing our responsibilities within the new Sustainable Development Goals. As you know, the Sustainable Development Goals have not substituted, but taken over from the Millennium Development Goals. And the differences between Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals is that it became more universal. And the commitment for Sustainable Development Goals has been also universal and towards the Agenda 2030. Agenda 2030 calls for leaving no one behind. And within a generation equality, we ensure that everyone is at the front. And women in the society, in science, in education, in culture, in house, in work, in every part of our life, she has to be there and she has to be in an equal front. We are developing strategies, and countries are developing their own strategies and policies and action plans and they have been working towards implementing the Beijing declarations. And as Her Excellency Ambassador Anne-Claire rightly mentioned, we are not looking for another declaration, but we are looking for bringing more and more to the front, to the picture. The civil society is very important, intermediaries between the United Nations, the international communities, and the voices of women and governments to ensure that they are heard and to ensure that action also are taken forward directly to the societies. This is actually the 5 cents in that. What's very important also to shed light is that governments cannot do it alone. International community and the UN cannot do it alone.
Everyone has to be involved.
Yeah, it is all of us who can do it. And as it has been highlighted and focused in this conference, Generation Equality, and what is related to it, which is the Generation Equality campaign, is actually to bring forward those advocates, those champions of change within communities, within schools, within businesses, to lead into voicing the priorities for women. We still, as we have seen during the pandemic, whatever small and slight progress in giving women more rights, we have seen drawbacks. We have seen lots of drawbacks during this period, and we need to move forward towards achieving the SDGs. 2030 is around the corner. It's only a couple of years. And in that, we need to work and to focus that SDG 5 should be within the center of our work. It is interrelated with every SDG. And that's why we as the United Nations are very much committed to that, globally, regionally, and also in Kuwait.
Okay, thank you very much. Your Excellency, can you describe France's role in the forum and what are the challenges?
So, there has been a lot of work already. Of course, you are still a few weeks from the first part in Mexico and a few months from the second part in France. But there's been a lot of discussion with the UN Women, the UN, Mexico, and the civil society to first define those priorities and try to focus on what is really important to move the needle further and get to this equality that Dr. Tarek Asher was describing very rightly. So we have done this work. We are also working as the head of one coalition, most particularly on one issue, which is the sexual and reproductive health and rights. And on each of this coalition, the goal is for the partners of the coalition to commit over the next 5 years to concrete actions in favor of the rights of the women. So it's very concrete, and we have to do also our homework, nationally speaking, to define the right progress to be made and build the coalitions with our partners. But of course, as Dr. Tarek Asher just mentioned, COVID made it even more difficult because of the physical distancing. Yes. And we would have dreamed to have 20,000 feminists gathering in Paris, but unfortunately that won't be possible. So we need to find the technical means to do so. But besides the logistic complexities, it's very difficult to see at the moment how women are actually bearing the disproportionate impacts of the pandemic. And so we are very afraid that, on the occasion of the pandemic, there could be actually, some movement to go backwards on women's rights, on the contrary to what we intend and what we expect from generation equality. And so that's why this moment is absolutely critical, because we think it points at the right moment, at a moment where women's rights are particularly threatened. They are threatened economically speaking, on the health aspects, but also on the rights themselves. We see that some, unfortunately, some governments around the world have taken this occasion to go back on and cut on some women's rights issue. And I think it's very relevant here to quote Simone de Beauvoir, this French philosopher who is so central feminist theory. There's a very famous line in her book that say, never take women's rights as granted. Because you'll see any kind of political crisis, economical crisis, you will see, people going back and, on women's rights and cutting women's rights. So I think we are also looking at the Generation Equality Forum with this in mind, that, this shouldn't be a moment to go backward, as Dr. Tarek El-Sheikh said very clearly. The title of the forum is Generation Equality. I mean, we want this to become a reality for, the young women, the girls, our children, and not wait for more 100 years to get to actual equality between men and women.
True. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, the same question, but from the Mexican perspective. What are the challenges?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Sharifa.
Sure.
Her Excellency Anne Claire has been very clear about the challenges. There are many, but I would like to stress that our two countries have been working really hard to make possible this forum, and of course there is a coordinated action, and many topics and issues are going to be discussed in both occasions. But in the case of Mexico, the Gender Equality Forum will start with the plenaries and the thematic dialogue sessions that are going to be action-oriented spaces for discussion to drive awareness, the need for action and gender equality, especially in a post-COVID-19 context. There are some words that are going to be key during the conference. The word of power. Why? Power will define the opening plenary. It will be dedicated to reinforcing the power and voice of feminism and the diverse civil society and youth. It will also stress the importance of public engagement and multi-stakeholder partnerships to achieve gender equality within the context of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. A plenary of transformative leadership will stress the importance of women in leader positions in different fields. The other two key words are crisis and hope. Structured in breakout sessions, these two key issues are going to be discussed during thematic dialogue sessions, focus on the structural inequalities and crises that underline the Beijing platform for actions, gaps, and lack of implementation across its critical areas of concern. Resilience and healing spaces for intergenerational and intersectional inspirational dialogue of transformative power. Networking spaces for showcase and learn from the good practices, advocacy tools, and mobilization experiences and challenges in the field. Cultural and creative spaces to promote inclusive citizen engagement. Action is also important. Spaces for the leaders of the action coalitions to present the actions coalition blueprints, and the board and members of the Compact on Women, Peace and Security and on Humanitarian Action will hold a substantive meeting. So as you can see, there are so many topics that are going to be discussed during the forums, and we really hope that before starting in Mexico and then in France, the forum will have a great success.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Dr. Tarek, what are the challenges from a UN perspective?
I see that here, and I will be actually focusing on the situation in Kuwait as the UN here and working on the issues of Kuwait. And what would be very important is that we link the gender and generation equality issues to the aspiration of Kuwait and Kuwait vision and Kuwait plan and Kuwait people. And what we see is that the human capital in Kuwait and the Human Development Index are not benefiting from the lack of, from the inequalities in gender and access, women access to jobs and opportunities. And for that, it is actually affecting Kuwait's positioning and Kuwait standards among the international community and among even levels of same income from different countries. And for that, there is a set of measures and a set of targets and actions that Kuwait need to put, and they have already put some of that in their priority plans or in their development plan. What is very important for us to see here is that the gender gap is growing, and the rank has been actually declining from 206 to 2020. For example, the Kuwait Gender Gap Index, Kuwait ranked 86 on 2006, and now 2020, it's 122. And this is because there is not much attention to harnessing the power of the woman experience, woman knowledge in leadership, in legislative positions, in government positions, and in parliament. What is very
representation, you mean?
Yes, representation in parliament. Yeah. Okay. What is very important? Yeah, what is very important to see, and this has been a very important analysis that has been done collectively with the United Nations agencies, programs, and fund, and the World Bank. It is 1/4 of the human capital accumulated is not currently being utilized in the labor market, mainly due to the low economic participation of women, and resulting in this broader, persistent gender gap. The economy will benefit more, the community will benefit more, and the society will benefit more. And what we want to also highlight that such challenge also is highly visible in the education sector. And in the education, when we see that the comparable quality of reading and mathematics and physics between boys and girls in the schools, we see that girls are more higher in their quality of reading, quality of performance in math and science than boys. So we are losing a power of a good potential labor force and good potential power for the economy and for the transformation of the society to the aspiration of Kuwait to be a knowledge economy and to be smart Kuwait in 2035. By harnessing more potential for women, in the society, we can do more, and Kuwait can do more into that. This is one. We see also the increase in violence, and particularly during this period of the pandemic, violence against women at many fronts, whether nationals or residents, domestic workers. This increase is seen and witnessed, and we have a study that has been done in collaboration with the government, UN Women and UNDP on the gender-based violence in Kuwait, and it showed the main root causes into that, and we need, and the government and the different community organizations need to work collectively hand in hand with the private sector to ensure that there is different programs and advocacy campaigns widely done in Kuwait to ensure that we address that. There's lots of efforts that has been done, and particularly the National Development Plan of 2020-2025 has clearly addressed SDG 5 and has put SDG 5 in many parts of the development plan, which show that the government is giving more attention to gender issues. We need this to go and transfer and transpire to the society. And when we look at the last parliamentary elections, we've seen lots of very qualified female candidates to the parliament. And I'm not intervening in any national issue, but I'm giving an overview of witnesses of the process. What we have seen also is that majority of the ladies that were going for election has opted to elect men rather than women. And this is something also that need to be addressed and discussed among the research circuits and among the universities, if we are willing to ensure that women gets their right and the right position within the society and within the parliament and within the government. One thing is that also very important that we need to as a challenge. I was being asked I was discussing with our colleagues here, who is the champion for women issues in the government? Who in the social affairs ministry is responsible for women issues? Which department, which person, and which department? And this is a question that we need to be, that it needs to be very clear, the champion for women issues in the government. Then also institutions that is responsible for government needs to do more and to be strengthened. We have the National Family Council, and this National Family Councils need to do more and to
more
be
empowerment, you mean?
also involvement.
The Family Council needs to have more empowerment within the government body.
Yes, needs to have empowerment. It needs to be strengthened. It needs to have an action plan. It needs to have a strategy. And there is also issues of legislation that needs to be done. There is lots of legislation that has been enacted over the past years to support in domestic workers, to support violence against women. Yet there is lots of legislations that needs to be giving more space and more leading role to women in society, in education, in economy, and in politics as well. I'm proud of many of the women in Kuwait that are contributing to the economy of Kuwait, whether in businesses or those working in the second level of the government, or working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the young diplomats. We need to see more of those. And I'm always happy to see that more and more are entering into the government, into position, and we hope we see them more in the leading position, and more of female ministers, and more of parliamentarians, and more in municipal councils as well. Because Kuwait has a lot of potential and has been, from historically, women had the leading role in Kuwait since the 20th and 30th of this decade.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Your Excellency Anne-Claire, which French achievements or experiences in terms of women empowerment can you share with us as a highlight?
Thank you, Anna. I mean, a very interesting analysis by Dr. Tarek El-Sher, and I think, you know, it's where it's interesting to kind of exchange best practices about what we've been doing in other countries and how we can help and support this movement in the civil society of Kuwait, and with the collaboration of the Kuwaiti authority. So with regards to France, as I was saying at the start, it's been really a priority for this presidency, but for also the one before. And so you have seen quite a change in the French society over the last 20 years. I'm not saying that the French society is perfect. You know, we've been tackling and struggling with very dire issues. Domestic violence is still an issue in France. Even, you know, pay gap. There's still a very much a pay gap between men's salary and women's salary. But there's a political will, and I think this is key for changing the society. We know that you know, this inequality is maybe the most entrenched inequality in human history. So of course you need this political will, as Dr. Tarek was saying, a governmental champion that can champion the rights of women and actually you know, carry it throughout the political agenda of a government, because it's not one issue, it's, you know, a cross-cutting agenda that's need to be defined to actually change the society. So when I look at France, what to me seems interesting in terms of making change happen is three elements. The first one, I think we have tried to, as Dr. Tarek was saying, harness the power of women and the expertise of women in our society much more than in the past. And we have done it with a very deliberate political decision, putting in place quotas in the high level of the civil administrations. For instance, in diplomacy, we have a quota that says that 40% of the newly ambassadors should be women. I mean, it made a change, of course, and this is true in all the sectors of the administration. It's true also on the executive boards of listed companies. So this has made a change in the companies as well. And it's true in politics. We have imposed the quotas on parties because we knew, from from a long history that political networks would only bring the same kind of profile and not women. So this has actually made compulsory for parties to look out their usual networks and bring women into the political sphere. And we see the situation changing now. So in the course of 12 years, with this new law, France has gone from being, medium, the median pupil in the middle of the range, to being the first one in Europe for a woman on boards on company. So we see that will is actually changing efficiently the landscape. The second focus is about stopping the violence. And because you cannot, harness the power of women if women are threatened, if their voices are silenced. And so we have made a lot of progress very recently, I have to say. And I think the French society was pretty blind to this kind of issues for quite a long time. And so we have defined last year a law that actually criminalized feminicide, with creating this word even in the mind of people to define a very special crime, which is killing your wife, killing your sister, killing someone in your family, and for the very reason that she's a woman and that you have a kind of a domination over her or authority. So this is actually changing the mindset in France. We are also tackling harassment in the street, and we have actually the first law in the world to tackle street harassment, and this has proven quite effective because now people are actually changing attitude in the streets. So those are important issues. The third issue is, of course, education. And if you want to bring about this new generation that have a different mindset, champions of change, as Dr. Tarek said, you need to educate both women and boys, girls and boys, girls that, yes, they can, to empower them, to give them the right opportunity, or the sentiment that, yes, they can go and study engineering and study science and become an astronaut. It's not just something that boys can do. And you need also to teach boys that, girls have the same capacity and can actually go and do these jobs as well, and that they have to respect them as an equal partner in life. And so this is also happening in France. It takes time. There's a lot of resistance, but I think on all those aspects, we can, of course, exchange the experience, the expertise that has been built throughout all these years of work on the ground with a very active civil society. And we hope to contribute as well in working with, the Kuwaiti civil society, just as the Women's Society, of course. But beyond, this is really the objective of the Generation Equality Forum, to bring all these wonderful activists that have really make the change, because it's you need these activists to push a government and to finally get this political will expressed at the top.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Your Excellency Miguel. So the same question from the Mexican perspective. What are the achievements that were made to empower women in Mexico?
Well, thank you, Sharifa. Gender equality is fundamental for the creation of societies that are fair and sustainable. Taking this into consideration, at the 74th United Nations General Assembly, Mexican Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard announced the adoption of a feminist foreign policy for Mexico. With this action, Mexico aims to mainstream the human rights approach, the gender perspective, and the intersectionality in all areas of its foreign policy. Additionally, it seeks to boost visibility of women's contribution to global actions. The challenge is huge. However, by adopting a feminist foreign policy, Mexico has taken an important step towards the achievement of gender equality and the establishment of a solid path, both internally and within the framework of the multilateral system. Mexico wishes its international policy design to be nourished by the central elements of feminism, such as substantive equality, personal autonomy in decision-making, the eradication of structural inequalities, and the elimination of discrimination, emphasizing human, individual, and social rights. Mexico has adopted these principles in order to build a more just society in the country and contribute to gender equality in the world. Mexico's feminist foreign policy has internal and international implications for Mexican society and the structure of the Mexican government. And that influences the orientation of its foreign policy on the multilateral agenda and diplomatic relations with other countries. In terms of internal politics, I would remark that the government of Mexico is fully committed to the achievement of gender equality. The gender parity in the president's cabinet and Congress is an example of this endeavor. Another good example that I would like to mention is that the Minister for Foreign Affairs is also trying to achieve gender parity in the cadres of the ministry, as well as in the Mexican Foreign Service. Of course, there are a lot of things that needs to be done, but I think Mexico is taking the proper steps toward these issues.
Perfectly true. Thank you very much. Dr. Tariq, I think we've seen the Mexican and the French perspective, and both of them has done an amazing job in achieving the women and gender equality. My question to you is, in your opinion, what can Kuwait do to improve women engagement representation in different areas? Dr. Tariq?
Sorry, I did not hear well the question.
I'm saying we've seen how the French and the Mexican ambassadors have done an amazing job in terms of achieving women empowerment and gender equality in their countries. But let's go local, like in terms of Kuwait. In your opinion, what can Kuwait do to achieve women engagement, representation in different areas?
First of all, I would like to highlight that we had a collaboration between the United Nations and the government of Kuwait, represented by the Supreme Council of Planning and Development and Kuwait University, the Kuwait Women Research Center, UN Women and UNDP, and other UN organizations also. This program has focused on economic empowerment, political empowerment, and violence against women issues. We have, during this program, we worked with the national counterparts and civil society organizations to enhance and support women leaderships in businesses and also in politics. We have trained a large number of very strong and very competent Kuwaiti young women. And we have also supported the global compact, the signature of a number of companies for the global compact, Women Compact for gender equality, to commit for providing more accessibility to women in leadership positions in businesses. There is lots. We also supported analysis on gender-based violence, as I mentioned, and gender justice. We had the report on gender justice, looking at different legislative issues that will need to be supporting government changes in legislation. On the other hand, there is lots to be done, because I believe, from the perspective of what we have seen, we need to redesign our collaboration, and Kuwait need to also work more towards reaching out and collaboration. And I mean the government here, where I'm staying, Kuwait, the government to use and harness the power of the civil society to be agents of change. And saying that because I see lots of issues that focus on the woman empowerment and abolishing of discrimination against women in the National Development Plan of Kuwait. So the priority and the commitment from the government is there. And you will see that in Program 2, in Program 3, in Program 7. I'm not going to state and mention the programs in detail, but all of this has a focus on when it is related, the program related to SDGs. They have SDG 5, which has been set forward. And one of which, just of the statements that they say, by ensuring the end of all forms of discrimination to women, full and effective participation and equal opportunities at all levels of decision-making, the government aims to strengthen women's capabilities and enhance their economic and political participation. And in this perspective, we believe that there will be lots of efforts that need to be done to align education outcomes to that, to create more of action that will translate this into reality and implementation plans.
Mm-hmm.
We see that lots of strong statements also, and if we talk about Program 7, which is by ending all forms of discrimination against women, the program will support equality in sports. And this is one thing that is very important to do. And we had the discussion about that internally, and strengthening sports and giving more access opportunities to girls and women in sports is very important to harness their potential and to give them more access. Also by improving overall healthcare services delivery for all, and also wanted focus to maternal mortality. Because also our study shows that maternal mortality is an issue that also affecting the harnessing the power of women. And there is lots of things that can be discussed, but I believe that from the government commitment and willingness, it is there. We need the collaboration of every part or every side of the society, from private sector to civil society, but this also, as you mentioned, and also confirmed by Her Excellency Ambassador of France, that it is very important to have the champion, and to have the champion and the political will. And the political will can come from the institutions that are empowered to lead and to coordinate and to manage and implement issues to change the reality, and to make more serious actions that will lead to this objectives that is integrated, and programs that is integrated in the National Development Plan. Also, when we look into the government commitment, we have seen also Kuwait's commitment to the human rights mechanisms. And there is lots of issues that Kuwait has committed to the human rights mechanisms, and they have already approved, for example, the recommendations on 107 to 115, which calls for a plan of action to ensure equality between women and men, and combating violence against women, which is 143, recommendation 143 and 145. And there is lots also that is related, the commitment of Kuwait towards the domestic workers and the violence against domestic workers, and also improving the health of children, and also equality in education, which is 199 to 103 as part of the recommendations. So we see Kuwait has done comparable to many countries of the in the region here. Their commitment and the openness of the government is there. And I think that moving forward to implementation would need strong partnerships with the international and regional allies who are willing and who are present here and have experiences and best practice that can be localized here through the intermediaries and partnerships of the civil society of Kuwait and the academic institutions and research institutions. We see experience from France, from Germany, from Italy, from United States, from Britain, from Mexico, from many countries that we can bring and can be brought into the table and can be more localized into the situation here. And Kuwait has lots also of experience that can be translated and communicated outside. So it's a two-way process of interactive dialogue and discussion for the benefit of all, and for developing and demonstrating the vision of Kuwait to have a good global positioning. And a good global positioning as the pillar 7 of Kuwait vision can happen with improvements in different indicators that Kuwait has committed to in its development plan. And the gender indicator, gender-based indices, is one of that, is one of those. And more, and there is, everything is there in the National Development Plan, the commitment and the willingness to do that. There is partners and friends of Kuwait that are willing to bring their expertise. So let's harness this towards the best for Kuwait and for Kuwaitis, and also for the region, because Kuwait has been always and will continue to be a model that others can look forward to.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Anklev, I have a question. Since you've seen the local perspective from the UN side, what are the main challenges for women in Kuwait, and how can we benefit from this forum, from the Gender Equality Forum?
Yeah, thank you, Sharifa. I think, Dr. Tarek identified very clearly the main challenges that still lie ahead in Kuwait, and it's interesting to look at the history of Kuwait. I mean, indeed, Kuwait has been pioneering in the Gulf region. If you look at the political rights, the Kuwaiti women were the first one to get the right to vote and get elected in the region. There's more freedom of expression, civil and women empowerment is quite high. If you look at so many business leaders in the economy, but also as Dr. Tarek said, in the ministries, very competent women that were also at the parliament, etc. And the parliament last year tackled for the very first time domestic violence. So there is a commitment, and has been very important efforts being made by the government. And as Dr. Tarek pointed out, it's all in the plans. I mean, if you look at the National Development Plan, the elements are there to actually move forward on all this women's rights issue. But the road is still long, and that's where the international contribution can help. And as our UN resident pointed out very clearly, it's always a two-way round. I mean, we learn as much from the activists here and the civil society here and the government here from its practices than the other way round. So I think, if you look at the situation on different points, I mean, obviously on political rights and civil rights, I mean, women got the right to be elected in parliaments, but sadly this year we didn't see any member of the parliament, female member of the parliament being elected. And all the figures point at the fact that women didn't vote for women in the election. So there's a lot that needs to be done around political culture, and as we were saying at the very start, law and the legislation is not the end of the road. You need to change the culture, and we see in France how difficult it is to change a very entrenched culture. So on violence, we are really looking forward to see the government moving on putting in place a shelter for the victims of domestic violence. There as well, there are good practices around the world that could be shared. It was also very encouraging to see the civil society, suddenly tackling this issue of street harassment. How can this be also dealt in the Kuwait society? And then you hear other concerns. You hear concerns of women that want to pass on the rights to their children. And I know this was discussed very recently in the parliaments. But you have also to look at the different categories of women in the society, and we know that perhaps most of the most vulnerable are not Kuwaiti women. They might be migrant workers, and there were some measures taken to protect those migrant workers, which are really encouraging. But somehow there, I'm sure we can work together to move forward. Better protect the most vulnerable people in the society, and find ways to give them the best protection. Whether in the shelter that actually was built, and I was happy to visit with the government, but beyond also, culturally speaking, how do we consider these vulnerable women in the society, and how do we protect them? So on all of this, as the UN, France would be very happy to work with both the civil society and the government. And we have actually had very good and productive discussion with the Human Rights Department as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And obviously there's a great leeway for us to work together on those issues. And as well with, of course, the Women's Society. And my last meeting with Lulu Al-Mulla was very positive, and I'm sure it opened a lot of opportunities for us to work together. But that's I think what Friends of Kuwait can bring to this table. And I think we have now a great momentum with this Generation Equality Forum that also open a window of opportunity for all of us to work together in this direction.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. So the same thing goes to His Excellency, Mr. Miguel. So from your perspective,
thank you.
Yes.
Excuse me, can I hear?
No, it's the same question, but from the Mexican aspect point of view.
Okay, thank you, Sharifa. Well, I think Ambassador Anne-Claire and Dr. Tarek has been very clear about many challenges, not only Kuwait, but many countries, Mexico included, are facing regarding women. Much more progress has been made in recent years for the achievement of gender equality, but still we must recognize that there is a long way to go. Of course, in Kuwait, we see that there's a lack of women participating, for example, at the National Assembly. I think it would be very good if there are some Congress women in the future at the National Assembly. But on the other hand, I have also had the chance to meet the outstanding ladies in the government sector, in the business sector, in different fields that are contributing in a very positive way to Kuwait. In the case of Mexico, also we have a lot of things to do. We are encouraging the participation of women in politics, in the economy sector, and I think that we have to continue really working hard to achieve full gender equality. It's not easy; it will take time, but we would like to have a more justice world in the future. We have to achieve this goal.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Excellencies. And now we go forward to the Q&A. So one of the questions that we have for all of the panelists, thank you all all of your participants. I would like to ask about the forum in both Mexico and France. Will Kuwait participate? Who are your target audience for this forum in Kuwait? And what will be the outcome expected from this participation?
So governments and the idea is to gather all stakeholders, as I was saying at the start. But of course, with COVID, unfortunately, we won't manage to gather physically all the people we would have loved to gather in Paris in June. So governments are invited, but also all the activists and feminist movements and civil society who are actually active on this issue, as well as business leaders which are participating in building coalition of change on this sector. So the result, as I was saying, is not a new declaration, because we have the Beijing Declaration, and we want This is, you know, this is our legal framework, and that we want to see implemented. So now it's more about building coalition of actions on the six priorities I identified at the very start of this this meeting, and gather in this coalition of action people that are actually making the change in their country, and they are supposed to commit to a 5-year plan, which you know, is supposed to really make a change on the ground for their nationals. So on each coalition, we will have governments, of course, which think that those issues are their priorities, but we will also have civil society, which are particularly active on this of the topics, and we will have companies that are supporting this kind of issues and are ready also to contribute to financing the aid towards the government that want to make this effort, because it's important not just to move forward in countries which have the means to do so, but to contribute to the betterment of the situation globally, even in emerging economy, which perhaps cannot, you know, fund this type of action and needs to be supported by the international community.
Okay, anyone who would like to add something? Anyone of your excellencies? Okay, so one of the comments that we got as well to Dr. Tariq. Mr. Tariq said Kuwait government have gender equality in their development. However, we think actions is very slow. Existing government have only one woman. Recent appointments of government body boards or top leaders are mostly men. So actions are very slow. How would you respond to that, Dr. Tariq?
Thank you, Sharifa, and thank you for this question. And I believe we have answered this question during the discussion. I have answered also Her Excellency, Ambassador Anclair. We said that we need champions and we need the institutions that would be responsible for the implementation. And we admitted and we confirmed that there is plans and there is all issues are there and all ingredients are there for taking forward gender equality and abolishing discrimination. Yet we need an institution to be fully responsible to take this forward, to link and to ensure that there is a social contract between the government and the society and the parliamentarians, and to look into areas where we need to go down deep to the society and to the community, to the schools and to the cooperatives and to the mosque, to ensure that same message are transpiring cross-cutting. And this message is the message about that equality for treatment, accessibility. The boys has the same rights as the girls, and they have the same opportunities and should have the same opportunities. It is a societal contract between the government, between the people, and between the community leaders, the parliamentarians. And in order to have that, you need this institution that is intermediary who are leading the women issues. Let's be the family council or a woman independent council. It's very important. But the women, the family council need to be fully empowered to do that. And I think that this is one of the things that would be very important, to have an institution empowered.
Okay, thank you very much. So one of the questions that we got as well. Okay, so the question is to Her Excellency, Anclair. In terms of implementation or the resistance that France faces while trying to protect women, do all women of all minorities or any kind of social backgrounds actually integrated, or how are they actually integrated in the programs and the plans that the French government does to empower women?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we completely understand the need for intersectional, support for women in France, and it's not just about what you would call white women. Of course, all minorities and all the diversity of the French society needs to be covered in this in the effort that the government is actually waging to support women's rights in France. And we know actually that some, communities are more vulnerable than other ones because of socioeconomic backgrounds, and we want to tackle this. So it's a very complicated issue because it's a cross-cutting issue, as the UN resident was rightly pointing at, because you need to tackle, both women programs that would be dedicated to, as I say, empower, stop the violence, educate, but you need also to address the socio-economic underlying conditions that are factors for part of the population being most vulnerable to political crisis, to economic crisis, etc. But let me just answer very clearly to one of the comments, because I know there were comments about Islam in France, and there were some critics that were issued in the Kuwaiti society about the position of France regarding Islam. And here I want to be very, very clear. I mean, France respects absolutely Islam, just like it respects any other religion or belief. We really have the basis for our social contract is freedom of expression and of belief, and including, of course, for our Muslim citizens. And I would really invite all the Kuwaiti citizens to come to France, because you would see in the street that Islam is the second religion of my country, and we have a very vibrant Muslim community that can actually thrive in the country. So I don't say that there's no discrimination in my country, but I can tell you that the government is
everywhere, of course,
committed to tackle the discrimination against any citizens or of the country, wherever he comes from and whatever religion he believes in.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Okay, so one of the comments that we got from Jamila, it is very important to highlight that we can't talk about equality and we still see women all over the world suffering from violence. So we need to work harder to overcome this issue to stop the violence. We completely agree with everything you said, Jamila. That's why we're having this forum, to raise the awareness and talk more about these kind of actions, of course. So my question is while I'm listening to the very interesting conversation from Your Excellencies, my question is as follows. What do you think NGOs or the non-governmental organizations should actually do to empower more women? I mean, try to integrate them from different backgrounds or from different socioeconomical backgrounds. What do you think that should be done in terms of that?
I mean, what I've seen in my own history and my different experience is that there's two ways, I think, for the civil society that are really making an impact. Is the first one is, of course, you are raising the awareness, and you are also lobbying towards the political decision makers. So I think by having this discussion with the government, the ministers, the members of the parliament, I mean, it increased the political urgency to move forward and put this question on the political agenda. And then the second part is, of course, towards women's, and I think empowering goes a lot with sharing experience, sharing expertise, just showcasing that different ways are possible and open to women, that yes, they can be what they want to become, and that through this conversation between women, but also with the support of allies, male allies that can mentor women, that can help them grow in their career, etc. You can really make a difference for women in the way they see their own life and career and path in life.
Okay, thank you very much. What kind of questions do we have as well? مداخلة وسؤال موجه لسعادة السفيرة. There's a question to the French government. Ahmed, is it possible for the Q&As to be live? Ahmed? Okay, Ahmed.
Sorry, again?
We have a lady called Jamila, but I'm not sure what kind of question does she have. She says she has a question appointed to Her Excellency, but her enclave, but I'm not sure. Jamila, can you type your question, please?
Yeah, actually, You can check Q&A.
Okay.
There's a question from Jamila.
Yes, Jamila, it is very important. Okay, we read your question, Jamila. Any more questions? Would you like to add anything? I think the Q&As are over. I don't see any more questions. Very interesting too. So thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Does anyone would like to say something or add anything? I hope we covered all of the areas that we have around the Generational Equality Forum.
Can I say something, Sharifa?
Sure, go ahead.
Just I have seen one of our distinguished participants, Mrs. Manal, and she's saying that we do not want anybody from outside to teach us, and we are not actually. Nobody is coming to teach anyone. What we are very clearly are saying that we are bringing experiences from different parts of the world. And it is the society and the community and the government authorities have the right to take this and to localize it and to use whatever experiences that suits the community and have a consensus among the people, all the people, because the community is the community at large. That it is not me or anyone else who can say what any person need and what any person want. We only bring experiences and lessons from across the world. And there is issues that when you see it is very successful in a number of countries, not one or two, but 100, you will see that this may be also possible in one country or another. So the main issue here is that we need to be open to the others and to the others' ideas, and to have this partly in our discussions, in our way of thinking, so that we can be as what we want, be as more equal, be as more gender sensitive, be as more prosperous as we aspire in our vision. Thank you.
True. We are here to learn from each other. That's why.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we learn from each. Yes, go ahead, Your Excellency.
Sharif, thank you very much. I just to complement about what Her Excellency Anne Claire and Dr. Tariq just mentioned. I think that gender equality is a very serious issue that should not be only managed by governments. The society has a lot of things to say and to do regarding this issue, and its involvement is extremely important. We cannot leave only governments tackling this issue. And in the case of Mexico, I would like to mention that Mexico is still a very traditional country. Still, there are some kind of education that segregates children, boys and girls on different sides. And it's the education in the case, I think it starts in the family. And the parents have a very important role to let the children know about the equality, about the importance and the role of both genders, especially the role of girls in the society. Parents need to teach the same rights and the same values to boys and girls. And parents have to explain very clearly to their children that boys and girls have the same rights and opportunities.
Yes.
I'm really convinced that in the future, as long as we make clear these issues to the young generations, we are going to surpass many of the challenges that we are facing today. It's really important to hear and enrich the conversation with some other experiences. That's the view of this webinar. We are learning about the experience in France, about the rights of women in France. We are learning about the experiences that the United Nations have about the issue and that Dr. Tariq is sharing with us. And well, in this case, I have to show a little bit about what Mexico is doing regarding this issue also. It's not an easy situation, but we think that we are working. It's a long process, but we are on the right path to make things better.
Definitely, definitely. I completely agree to what you said. I mean, I think Mexico and Kuwait share a lot in common because both of us were very traditional and we hold on to our culture as well in a very proud way. But still, some things we actually need to work on, especially from the women's empowerment perspective, which is completely true. I mean, we do share the same thing. Any more questions? So who we do? Okay, so we have Jamila and we have Manal Al-Fadli. Manal Al-Fadli, do you have any questions? Okay, Q&A. Just a second. Okay, so we have an open question. There's a question in French. I'm not that good in French. Your Excellency, can you read the question? Okay. So we have someone who wrote the question in French for the audience. So Her Excellency will be translating for us the question.
Yes.
And she will reply.
Sorry, I didn't open my mic, but I'm going to try to translate it with my bad English. So Jamila, it's a question from Jamila, and she said that we know that the question of inequalities in the Arab world lies on the male domination. So to your point of view, Mrs. Ambassador, which are the reasons in France that explain the inequality of opportunities in the access to jobs and the decision-making position.
Okay.
So my answer to this is I think it's the same kind of issues that we are facing. You know, I think male domination was just the dominating culture for so many millennials, and that it's so difficult to revert it. And that's why it's good to share practices, because you know, no society has the magic wand to make it an equal society. And so in France, we are facing exactly the same challenges. Basically, you know, it's in the access to decision-making position. It's just that for years and years and centuries, the networks of power have been male-dominated. So of course, there are no, you know, not a lot of women yet at this level of decision-making, and that's why the previous French government decided to put forward quotas, because otherwise we wouldn't have seen this change in this sphere of powers. And we know that, of course, when women manage to access this type of position of decision making, I mean, they can implement the change in their organization. And we see also the culture, the mindset changing inside the institutions when there are more women sitting at the tables. And if you look at what sociology is saying, sociology says that the voices are not heard when there are less than 30% around the table. So it means that, you know, one woman sitting at the table and with many men, usually you cannot listen to her because, you know, it's very, very difficult for her to be heard in a culture which is used to only listen to men concerns. But when you reach this level of, you know, more women sitting at the table, more than 30%, suddenly their point of view becomes an important point of view to be taken into account. So there's no magic wand in France, and I wish my society would be completely equal. It's not, and we are also struggling to get there. But I think we're all facing the same kind of difficulties.
I agree. I mean, you have the Kuwaiti perspective, which is an Arab, the French, which are Europeans, and you have the Mexicans from Latin American point of view. So, I mean, the problems are everywhere, but we have different similarities and differences, which is perfectly normal. I mean, this is like from a personal opinion. So do we have any more? Yes, we have another question My question is, can we collaborate with your excellencies and build program to achieve the previous goals and work on the challenging that we are facing in Kuwait? And okay, so this is from Sahil Salam. That was her question. Can we collaborate with your excellencies and build a program to achieve the previous goals and work on the challenges that we are facing in Kuwait? This is a question to all of your excellencies. I guess yes. I mean, everyone wants to work with one another. We have another question. Yes.
Yeah, of course we are. I think we send a very clear message that we would be very happy to cooperate and collaborate with both the Kuwaiti authorities and the Kuwaiti civil society in moving forward.
Sure. We have another question from Minal Al-Fadli. Complete equality is very harmful to women. This is my opinion. Anyone would like to respond?
If I may try,
Sure.
I think we've never seen a complete equality between men and women. So, to my point of view, we haven't seen how harmful it can be, and I'm afraid to say that what we are seeing is women being vulnerable, women not getting their rights recognized, women being, disproportionately victims of violence, etc. So it's, I mean, this. Something there that must be an issue for us all to tackle to better our societies.
Sure. So our time is up. Any more questions? Okay. So basically, this is one of the subjects you mentioned at the firm, reproductive rights. What is including the passing? So we have another question from Sumaya, and this is our last question. One of the subjects you mentioned to be discussed at the forum was reproductive rights. Would that include passing the nationality of mothers to her children?
Sorry, I was reading the question. So I'm not sure that this issue is actually covered in the reproductive rights. I think it's more, the question of sovereignty and autonomy of women over their own body. So it's related to, pregnancy, etc., and how you can deal with it freely. But I'm not sure the legal consequences of, giving birth are actually covered. But perhaps Dr. Tarek knows that better than I do. I think this might be covered in another aspect on the legal aspects of
areas as well.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. So this is the end of our session. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. And would you like to say anything before we finalize it?
Well, I just, please, Dr. Tarek, you first.
No, please go ahead, Your Excellency.
Well, I just wanted to thank again for the opportunity of participating in this forum. I think it has been really, really, really nice to hear different opinions and to hear the different aspects about this important issue. There's a long way to go yet. We have to work really hard. But I am convinced as a man that women deserve respect, and we should do anything in our hands as men to have a better future for women in the world.
Oh, thank you very much, Your Excellency. Anyone would like to say anything?
I mean, thank you so much, Sharifa, for having us tonight, and thank you for the Women's Society for putting this together. I'm just going to conclude on generation equality. I really hope that your generation actually will see equality, and I think we can all harness the great inspiring power that we heard tonight to make this happen as fast as possible.
Definitely, and we're honored to have you overboard. Thank you, everyone. Dr. Tariq, would you like to say anything before we end the session?
Yes, thank you so much for this very interactive discussion and for the convening the generation equality discussion here in Kuwait. I believe that it was really enriching for me, the different views that I have heard here. And I think that one of the things, just to comment on the reproductive issues and the nationality issues, the nationality issue of children is a right, and it has been always on the agenda of the periodic reviews in the Human Rights Council. And some of it always on the recommendation, that's always being discussed, because we believe that children have rights, not generally for Kuwait, but we mean in general that children born to a male or a female have the right to get the nationality of either any one of them. So in this respect, the equality, the woman giving the right of birth and nationality to her kids is equal to have the equal right as men. But this nationality issue is a country issue and a state issue. We are not discussing it here at the level of the country, and we are not engaging into saying that whether Kuwait is doing that or not. But there is lots of discussions on that, and the government has been working on many changes on the nationality issues. And I think that there is progress across the world. And across the world, because the Secretary General and the different member states and the UN are looking forward to ensure an equal and free world away from discrimination, and particularly for gender. And to conclude, we as in the United Nations, we are not just promoting ideas that we do not believe, and we have committed in our strategy to have gender parity within our staffing. So starting from the heads, starting from the senior principals level of the senior executives of the United Nations agencies, programs and funds, we reached 50% parity. So 50% women, 50% men. We have a Secretary General who's a male, we have a Deputy Secretary General who's a female. And then we are going at different levels, at USGs, at ESGs, at D2, D1, we are going all level. We are, as resident coordinators, 131 resident coordinator across the world. We have also reached parity, but not parity. We have more women than men as resident coordinators. And the Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General looks in every recruitment. And I believe that also in my office here in Kuwait, I have also more 60% females and 40% male that have gone into the process, not because of the parity and imposition, but because of the quality of their in the competitive selection process. So there was men and women, and they have got into the process because they were more competent. So this is what I wanted to say, that if given the opportunity, they can be more competent in many situations. And in the Gulf, working in the Gulf, I have seen more competent women in the Gulf that can take the lead. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. It was really nice discussing all of these different vibrant topics. I hope to see Kuwait soon, hopefully participating in the Gender Equality Forum. Thank you, Your Excellencies, and have a good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you. Thank you very much.